we actually introduced a lot of new experiences from a game presentation side, from an experience side as well too. And then also, we know that as I cover, they want to be able to start to incorporate, how fans can actually take part with Faces in the Crowd is actually one of the things that we're doing with them, where they've invested in bringing in an agency, Memento, to come on in and really create this Faces in the Crowd, where at any moment during the game, you can actually pick a moment and see what your expression was, what your photo was during that time, and put it on a Sports Illustrated cover. So they're really very, very much engaged almost on a daily basis, trying to figure out new ways for us to improve the experience.
Tim, did you make Faces in the Crowd during that intramural game at Cornell when you had some sort of sickness, but you scored 2 goals that you'd like to talk about?
It was more than 2 goals, but it was more than 2 goals. I don't know why you just assumed it was 2 goals.
I thought you told me it was 2 goals.
I said a few goals.
A
few goals.
Welcome to Wait, What? Sports Biz Chat with DP and McGhee. This is the podcast that takes a often irreverent, sometimes cynical, and on occasion even a serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, 𝘉𝘂𝘪𝘭𝘭𝘢.
And I'm Tim McGhee.
So, Tim, we've blown through February, one of the busiest of months in the sports business, and we've blown right past our 100th episode. It's March, and a lot of attention will be back on college sports. But of course, as always, no shortage of other business stories to discuss in the sports biz. So I'll start the show by asking you, what is on your mind?
I read yesterday, and it's very timely in terms of the conversations you and I have had about an upcoming guest, but I won't say any more than that about the upcoming guest. But 5 national governing bodies, or NGBs, in the Olympic world announced that they were going to join forces to sell sponsorships as a group. USA Fencing, US Squash, USA Cycling, US Sailing, and US Rowing announced that they will go out to market as a group and sell sponsorships, and the revenue will be split based on the size of the membership. So this is something I think is a great idea, because I've worked with US Rowing and some other NGBs, smaller NGBs over the years, and commercializing their assets is very difficult in many circumstances. So as we ramp up towards the games going to LA in 2028, I think this is a great way for brands to get in the Olympic space, and for these national governing bodies to be able to secure more funding, because the U.S., I believe, is one of only 3 countries in the world that doesn't get direct federal funding for their efforts. The USOPC, through its efforts, through the efforts of USOP, they get their funding from 2 main sources: sponsorships and media rights. And oftentimes NGBs get their funding from the National Organizing Committee based on performance in the most recent games. So it becomes very challenging for some of these smaller national governing bodies to really be able to provide funding for their athletes in their training and program and science efforts and so forth. So I'm really glad to see that. And the last thing I'll say is that this is something I've done a lot of work with USA Luge in the past, some great people up in Lake Placid who have faced very similar challenges. And we tried to do this a few years ago, and we found it difficult to get traction, because you have to get over the hump of are you competing with these other national governing bodies, or should you be cooperating and collaborating with them? So I'd love to get your thoughts.
I think this was one of those stories that you read that is seemingly not a front page type of story that you just go, wow, this is absolutely fantastic. I think it's a super smart move for these NGBs to come together. The timing, I think, is great. It gives brands a chance to touch the Olympic Games in a way that may be a little broader than going at one single narrow NGB. and speaks, I think, more collectively to this storyline of what the Olympics are all about, rather than just a single sport. I love this story, and given that squash is going to be a new player, and obviously the folks at U.S. Squash will be looking to put on one heck of a showing to have the sport continue on. I think it's a great move for them to be a part of this. And I'm excited to see what they're able to do. I'm excited to see what the structure of the organization is going to be, what their go-to-market strategy is going to be. But I think they have a great story to tell in doing it this way. So I think it's absolutely fantastic.
The woman who's going to be heading up these efforts is a woman by the name of Stephanie Borges. She most recently came from Six Flags, where she headed up sales and marketing. She actually is one of the owners of one of the teams in the professional squash league here. So she obviously knows about the power of the sport of squash. But Eric Krasnow, who spent many years at Soccer United Marketing, before that he was at College Sports Television. He most recently was head of partnerships for U.S. Sailing and had some really good success. He's recently left to take another position, but he had some really good success in securing commercial partners for U.S. Sailing, which historically has had a lot of difficulty getting sponsors in. So yeah, I'm really excited about it too. I think it's going to be really important in the Olympic movement going forward as we go towards 2028. And when you look at some of the teams that or the national governing bodies who are covered under this agreement, U.S. Rowing's had tremendous success on the Olympic stage. USA Cycling has had success. Squash, as you mentioned, is the first time sport in the Olympics. Fencing has had success at the Olympic Games. I'm not too sure about the success of sailing on the Olympic stage, but to your point and my earlier point is there is an opportunity for brands to get involved in sports that have a great chance for success in bringing home medals in 2028.
Well, sailing's been an interesting one because Sail GP, which is the global series, has gotten a fair amount of attention and certainly has been pretty aggressive in their sponsorship approach overall from the series and then the individual teams, including the U.S. team. So I think that will be, one of the storylines that at least elevates that a little bit. But I think the key to it, right, is that they're able to go in and lead with whatever they think is the right thing for the brands that they're going into, but then creating some sort of breadth of involvement for those potential partners.
I have to assume that these NGBs will also be able to go out and secure partners on their own, although I did not read that in the article. Quick aside, very early in my career, I was looking after Lucid Technologies. As you recall, they were one of the spinoffs from AT&T that made the equipment. They inherited a number of the sponsorships that AT&T had, including the NBA, the PGA Tour, the Olympics. And I remember being on the phone with somebody who was trying to sell sponsorship to the Whitbread Round the World race. If you remember, Whitbread was a sponsor for many years for this yacht race that went around the world. And I said to this guy, I said, well, I don't know if it's a brand fit. I don't know what it would say about the Lucent brand if the boat that they were on happened to capsize during one of the legs of the race. And I will always remember this guy probably went on to have tremendous success because without missing a beat, he said, well, we'll put the logo on the keel. And I just thought that was a really smart way to overcome an objection.
There you go. I want to stay on the topic of Olympic related activity a bit. And I meant to make this a bit of a spotlight on sponsorship segment. So maybe the whole thing will be, we'll see how we cut this show up.
How do we feel about these sponsorship deals?
Recently, the IOC added a new sponsor, but it was coming on the heels of some defections in the top sponsor program, meaning the worldwide sponsorship of the IOC. And that's TCL, Chinese-based company, which basically people are thinking of as replacing Panasonic in that category because it's a electronics brand. But they had 4 defections in this past cycle: Atos, Bridgestone, Panasonic, and Toyota. Getting TCL in obviously is a boost, and it was the first one signing since AB InBev. come on. So they're back up to, they're at 12. And I think that gives them what they want. I was very interested to see that Corona's, I think it's pronounced zero alcohol beer, is going to be the global beer sponsor, individual brand.
Zero.
Well, yes. Okay.
As in those
Zero. I understand. And my name, by the way, is Pato. I'm just going to start changing it to that. But yes, of course, it's Zero, and I will pronounce it correctly. But I was being an American and pronouncing it incorrectly. Anyway, it was interesting to have 4 defections in a given year. Now, we all know that the IOC top sponsorship program has risen in price of late, I think, to reflect the overall value of the deal and put them, of course, at the pinnacle of Olympic Games sponsorship. But those are not easy to come by. So landing TCL and keeping something big in the Asian market, obviously, I think was very important to the IOC as well.
It'll be interesting to see what other brands come on board. I'm sure there will be more as we get closer to LA in particular, but also Milano Cortina as well, because there was tremendous success coming out at the Paris Games, and I think there was a lot of momentum and optimism coming out of those games as we head towards the next Summer Games in LA. That the Olympics is not irrelevant, that the Olympics can deliver an impactful platform to brands at the top level and other levels as well. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, LA 28 is going to be great. When we had Terrence Burns on the show not too long ago, we talked, I think coming out of Paris, right? We talked about the importance, like we did not understate the significance of the Paris Games is to kind of re-spark the Olympic movement, if you will. And I think we all agree that it did that. And heading into, again, I'll agree with you on Italy, of course, but for the Winter Games. But LA is going to be pretty massive. And I think it's a market that has experience running the games. And I agree with you that the interest from a brand standpoint is going to be huge. One of the challenges I think that has always been there is people coming on to the local organizing committee, what that means as it relates to top deals, what the cost of those things are. And I think they've been better about trying to sort that all out. Did I know you had a dog?
I don't know if you know I have a dog. I have one sitting right next to me.
I knew you had a dog, actually, but I don't think he's never, is it a he or she? I'm sorry.
It's a she. It's
okay.
Petunia.
Okay, Petunia. All right, welcome to the show.
But Petunia, I think, wants to go out because I'm home alone, number one. Well, Petunia's sister, Princess, is next to me on the other side, but Princess is always by my side. Princess is a pure white cat. I would just like to go on record and say that I did not have any say in naming either one of these pets. I wanted a dog that went woof, and Carolyn wanted a dog that said yip, and we got a dog that says yip. For those of you who can't see, Petunia is about a 12-pound Pekingese that we rescued from a puppy mill in South Carolina. We didn't personally rescue her. We didn't go down and take Petunia out of the puppy mill, but a rescue organization here in New Jersey. So this is my PSA for rescues, and Princess was a rescue as well.
Okay, that's very cool. Good job. Very good. I don't know where Petunia's beauty and sheer magnetism just threw me off there.
Yes, but we were talking about the Olympic Games, and we were talking about the power of the Olympic Games.
Yeah, and
I was going to say that when Terrence Burns came on, and he was extremely optimistic and positive about the power that the Olympic Games could still have for brands, I was skeptical. I oversaw some of our Olympic marketing when I was at AT&T. I've worked with NGBs. I did some work with Kathy Carter and past guest Chris Pepe at USOP when they first launched. So I have always been of the mind that the Olympics can be powerful, but I was skeptical coming out of the last couple of games that it would still be as relevant a platform. But I will readily admit that I changed my mind coming out of Paris and going into the next cycle with Milano Cortina in 26 and LA in 2028.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised if there's not more brands signing up, whether it's through USOP or through the top program, or whatever level of involvement in the Olympic Games these brands choose to take.
I agree. Or sign on the US side with the 5 new NGBs that have pulled their resources together and going out to market. So I think it's going to be a great multitude of opportunities.
Yep. And then give another shout out to a past guest, Mark Riccio in USA Lacrosse. I think that's going to be has a potential to have a lot of impact and see a lot of success commercially over the next 3+ years.
Complete non sequitur, other than the fact that it was another former guest that we had on that spoke very much about the Olympics, and that was Steve Margosian.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote me the other day, and it was great. It was coming off of our episode where we talked about Super Bowl ads, and we both liked the Dove one with the young girl running and
with Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run in the background.
Right. And this is the quality we have of our guests, and it's not just because Steve went to Wake Forest, by the way, but he thought it was fascinating that Bruce sold his library, right, for a lot of money. I think he should have sold it for more. Personally, it's Bruce's library. I think he should have gotten super top dollar. But anyway, so and Her did that rendition of Born to Run, fabulous rendition of the song. But you'll notice they kept out Tramps Like Us. They didn't say that line.
Right.
And he was just making that observation of that being like, because that line is so critical to the essence of that song, right? The song that Bruce wrote.
Right.
Tramps Like Us, baby, we were born to run. We got to get out of here, because pretty much every song Bruce wrote was about that. But they couldn't do that over this Running Girl. Yet the song was still perfect. The song was still perfect. And he just made the observation, nothing more than that, which I thought was kind of cool. And he reached out about one of our shows, and so I just letting you know that. Like I said, it was a non sequitur, other than he was another past guest.
It's interesting because I did not notice that about the song.
I honestly didn't either until Steve brought that to my attention, and of course I went back and listened to it, and he was exactly right. But the song still works quite well. But had Bruce not sold his catalog, would that have been used?
Interesting. Probably not. Yeah. So many of his early songs were about, metaphorically getting out of New Jersey. It's sort of ironic that he continues to live here to this day.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing he has a few places elsewhere, but
yes.
I mean, he's Bruce. So,
right. Couple of other quick hits. You got time for that?
Of course. Yes.
So, we coming off of our conversation last week with the NHL John Lewicki and the success of the Four Nations face-off, there was a Stadium Series game this past week in Columbus at Ohio State's football stadium. The Columbus Blue Jackets against the Red Wings. Second largest crowd in NHL history, 94,751 fans crowded into the Horseshoe to watch that game. I do find it kind of interesting that it came in second to the University of Michigan.
Yes.
So if I'm Ohio State, I would rather take the Natty than take the first place in hockey fandom.
Yeah.
But that was I think
you know what though? They're still pissed off. They're still pissed off about it though.
I'm sure.
I agree with you. They'd rather take the Natty, but they're still pissed that they finished second in that
Michigan
amazing
in
total.
anything. But I think it speaks to the momentum that John mentioned last week when we spoke to him coming out of Four Nations, that game would draw such a big crowd. So I thought that was a good proof point.
I think the NHL has done a remarkable job with these major events, Winter Classic, Stadium Series, now this Four Nations face-off, going into an Olympic cycle here, World Cup, and they really crush it. They crush it on these things, and those games are electric when they've gone to stadium. I've had the opportunity to go to several Winter Classics and Stadium Series games, and the environments are just amazing.
I can't remember being too much colder than I was for one of those Winter Series games down in Philly.
It's brutal.
Oh my goodness, was that cold? My daughter still hasn't forgiven me, and she's only recently thawed out, and it was about 15 years ago.
I have a quick hit one I want to add, and I didn't tell you I was going to do this, and that is you, my friend, were just down in Durham, North Carolina, doing something very cool. You were watching a Duke-Wake Forest game where Wake Forest held Duke, the number 2 team in the country, to 2 points in the first 5 minutes. So I really wanted you just to comment on that for a bit, and then maybe tell us what else you were doing down there.
We were surprised that that Wake Forest went out to a 2-0 lead. I was there with another past guest, Eric Oberman, president of the Atlanta Tip-Off Club. But I will tell you that Duke, you looked up and Duke all of a sudden had a double-digit lead. I don't know if they'll probably be a number 1 seed. I think they have the potential to go deep into the tournament, especially getting back Tyrese Proctor after a knee injury. They didn't know if he was going to come back. He only missed 1 game. Cooper Flagg is everything that he is touted to be. 𝘗𝘵𝘦𝘵𝘴𝘰, I think, is going to be a great player, another freshman on that Duke team. And they have a freshman, and I'm going to butcher his last name, so I'm not even going to try it. An African kid who just unbelievable shot blocker and defender and rebounder. If he develops and he's got a pro body. He's listed at 7'2", and has a pro body now as a freshman. If he can develop his offensive game, I think he's going to be just a phenomenal player. But I digress. Yes, we were down there in my role as chairman of the Tip-Off Club. We gave our Outstanding Contributor Award, which is a Lifetime Achievement Award, to Coach K. He couldn't have been more gracious. Eric and I went out at halftime of the game and presented Coach with the award in front of the Cameron Crazies. And as I was saying to you before we came on the air, just walking off the court with Coach K and having just that brief interaction to him was definitely a highlight of my career for sure. So thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, well, no, it was very cool. It was very cool seeing you there. I pretty much tuned out my mind after halftime after you gave out the award, but because it was a tough one to watch. But Duke is really good, and that's great that you were there with Eric and were able to have that honor. Very cool. Congrats. Thank you.
I'm not sure that Wake Forest is a tournament team this year, to be honest with you, coming out of that game.
Sadly, it's been what we're seeing over the last few years. In the Steve Forbes era, he's obviously done great at beginning of seasons, and it's just turned around badly. We played Duke tough first game. Had some decent wins, but just the team digresses, it seems, as the seasons go on, which it's not good. Not good when it comes to selection. Not good when it comes to 𝘕𝘠𝘠𝘠.
I get to be excited about St. John's this year, so we'll see what they do.
By the way, let's throw out another past guest.
Who's that?
Ed Kroll, who's now at St. John's. Ed Kroll, excuse me, Ed Kroll, great former guest, who's now, I mean, what an unbelievable year they've had. You take the regular season and just, man. So congrats to Ed.
And they have really upped their marketing game at St. John's, and I think Ed can get a tremendous amount of credit for that. It's notwithstanding the fact that Pitino's turned that team around and they've had great success on the court. I think Ed and his team in the athletic department have done a great job of engendering excitement in the St. John's community, students, alumni, fans, New Yorkers in general. I think they're gonna do pretty well in the Big East tournament. I will say that I'm concerned about their free throw shooting. But this is not WFAN, so we won't go too much into this.
It's not. But I also think the lesson here is that clearly our former guests go on to great achievements. It's there.
Can't be denied. We are the antithesis of the Madden curse.
Yes.
You come on this show, all your dreams will come true.
Wow. Let's state that. Should that be our new tagline? That should be our new tagline. or at least our go-to-market for guests tagline. I love it.
And so for those guests who have declined our gracious invitation, come on the show and all your dreams will come true.
Excellent.
What do you say, partner?
Let's take a break. We have guests coming up, and two guests. We'll hold until after the break to tell you who that is, but we're very excited.
It's time for our guest.
So we're back, and we're excited to welcome the marketing and commercial brain trust of Major League Soccer's New York Red Bulls, Joe Stetson and Elisa Padilla. Joe serves as the chief commercial officer of the Red Bulls, overseeing sponsorship sales and more with that club. His sports biz history in New York City is very impressive, and not just because he worked with me at Van Wagner before joining the Red Bulls, but we'll put that in the column as well. He's held key marketing positions with both the Brooklyn Nets and MSG, where he really honed his sports brand and sports talents.
Content creator, board member, seasoned marketer, amazing person. Elisa Padilla has held senior positions at brands like the Howard Hughes Corporation, Apple, AT&T. She's had great runs at Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment, the Miami Marlins, and now she serves as the chief marketing officer for the New York Red Bulls. Welcome, Joe and Elisa.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank
Great
you.
to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have this conversation with you all.
Yeah, we are as well. So many things going on with Major League Soccer, and certainly with your club as well. Joe, wanted to start with you. Back in December, the Red Bulls announced a 13-year agreement with Sports Illustrated Tickets to rename what had been known for a long time as Red Bull Arena, since its opening in 2010, to Sports Illustrated Stadium. Would love you to take us through how the deal came about with this truly iconic sports brand.
Yeah, we're really, really excited to have Sports Illustrated Tickets as a partner. Sports Illustrated Stadium. I mean, as somebody that grew up waiting every Thursday morning for the Sports Illustrated new edition to come on in, my brothers and I would fight over who got to read it first, who got to post, the covers on our walls. That one also took on a special meaning for myself, but we were really, really excited to bring them on board. And it's actually a process that, quite honestly, started 6 years ago, in the sense that this building has always been, Red Bull Arena since the time it opened in 2010. The name of the team is New York Red Bulls. The name on the jersey and the brand on the jersey is Red Bull, and will always be that way. But for us, we always felt like there's an asset there in the naming rights for our building that we should be able to go out there and sell. And at least for the first 5-6 years that I was here, that wasn't an option. And we finally started to take a look at that opportunity about 6 years ago. And we were really, really close. We were walking down the aisle with somebody, and then, life happened, as we know, in 2020, and things took a different turn. And like a lot of projects that were going on in 2020, they took a pause. And for us, we decided we were going to step away from it, and we weren't going to go out there and remarket, and we were going to stay with Red Bull on the building. About a little over a year ago, though, we decided to take another crack at it. And we started to explore that opportunity with a bunch of different partners. Right around that time, though, too, we recognized that we might have an opportunity on the ticketing side to explore relationships with potentially a new partner. We've been at Ticketmaster since 2015. They've been wonderful and in so many ways, but we also knew that there were a lot of new players in the space as well. And we took this opportunity with the naming rights as well as with the ticketing opportunity, to see, hey, is there something there where we can kind of combine the two? But it's got to be the right partner. It's got to be the right brand. And from a ticketing perspective, it's got to be somebody that can not only operate our ticketing business, but innovate to the next level of what ticketing business, and quite honestly, commerce business, can be for a sports team, where we're looking not only at ticketing, but other opportunities within fan experience and other e-commerce opportunities within that ticketing ecosystem, and really just improve that experience, that digital customer journey for our fans.
Elisa, before I have my first question for you, Joe, just a quick follow-up. 13-year agreement, is there any significance to that term? Because usually when you hear about naming rights deals, they're 5, 10, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Any significance to that length of term?
Yeah, 13 years was actually something we decided that, typically with naming rights deals, it's got to be a 10-year deal. And David and I know this from our time at Van Wagner, when we were working with a lot of naming rights opportunities. you've got to have, 10 years for us was the minimum. Sports Illustrated really, because of the ticketing side of things, they really wanted to make sure that we had a long runway to be able to spend at least 12 years, maybe even more, in this case, 13 years, to be able to evolve that side of the business and really innovate in that space. So for us, 13 ended up being the right number. For me, on a personal side, there's always been a lucky number 13, but that had nothing to do with it. It just so happens that 13 for me and my family has always been a lucky number.
Thanks. Elisa, you are the shepherd of a mega brand. The Red Bull name is known globally. You're building the New York Red Bulls brand name, and you have the opportunity to partner with another iconic brand, Sports Illustrated. How does that factor into how you're going to be marketing the club and the season and the arena going forward?
Yeah, so first, Sports Illustrated Stadium is the new home of the New York Red Bulls. So for us, that is a very, very exciting. And in partnership with Sports Illustrated Tickets and Sports Illustrated Stadium, we are looking at the fan experience. Everything that we think about in marketing is from street to seat, right? It's how are we engaging fans the second that their feet hit our parking lot or the sidewalk when they're getting off the path. So this partnership is affording us the opportunity to really look at experiences. What else can we offer our fans from an in-match presentation perspective? How are we capitalizing on the special moments where, fans can see themselves post-game through Sports Illustrated Tickets and some of their partners. So it's all about fan engagement. And for us, right, if you come and you have an unbelievable experience, you're going to want to come back and you're going to tell your friends. So for us, it's really leveraging the partnership to really elevate everything that we're doing from a fan perspective.
Just to add to that, the difference between having a Sports Illustrated brand as a name rights partner versus another category is they are so engaged and invested in making sure that, and also part of it being too, that they're going to be our future ticketing partner. For them, they are just as much engaged to make sure that we're growing our audience, growing our fan base, getting as many people into the stadium. So they're actually taking part in programming the building. We're going to have concerts, other SI events that are going to be here at the stadium as well. But they're also investing. They're investing in the fan experience, as Elisa pointed out on Saturday. This past Saturday for our home opener, we actually introduced a lot of new experiences from a game presentation side, from an experience side as well too. And then also, we know that as I cover, they want to be able to start to incorporate how fans can actually take part with faces in the crowd is actually one of the things that we're doing with them, where they've invested in bringing in an agency, Memento, to come on in and really create this faces in the crowd, where at any moment during the game, you can actually pick a moment and see what your expression was, what your photo was during that time, and put it on a Sports Illustrated cover. So they're really very, very much engaged almost on a daily basis, trying to figure out new ways for us to improve the experience.
Tim, did you make faces in the crowd during that intramural game at Cornell when you had some sort of sickness, but you scored 2 goals that you'd like to talk about?
It was more than 2 goals, but it was more than 2 goals. I don't know why you just assumed it was 2 goals.
I thought you told me it was 2 goals.
I said a few goals.
A
few goals.
That's okay.
I'm really excited to come out to a match this year because Elisa was kind enough to invite my wife and I last year, and I will tell you that the game presentation was first rate, A++. So if you've even improved on that, I can only imagine what it's like. So,
well, I can tell you that this year the home opener was by far incredible. We introduced the New York Red Bulls tradition, which is something that fans had been asking for. And everything from the launching the tradition to the anthem to the show, the team did an incredible job of elevating everything that we did last year. So Tim, I'm excited for you to come out and see the next level of presentation.
But yeah, the game experience at Sports Illustrated Stadium is just Always been great. Always loved it out there.
David and I have developed the talent of just becoming America's guest. We flatter our guests in the hopes that they're going to invite us out to to a game or a match or a race or whatever it happens to be. We have no shame. We have no journalistic integrity whatsoever.
Joe knows I'm an expert at that path ride out there, Harris.
Yeah, David's actually been he's been a pioneer. But yeah, no, we will have you folks out anytime. And by the way, flattery actually is very, very helpful. So
It works with us too, by the way, just letting you know.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the new sponsorships, exciting, the new experiences, but the team's been amazing. The Red Bulls had a great run last year to the MLS Cup final, dropping to the LA Galaxy, unfortunately for you guys. But talk a little, and this is a question to both of you, if you could share how that momentum on the pitch side is helping you from a sponsorship side, and then certainly from a fan and general marketing side.
I'll start with this one because I think that it was our captain who really ignited the fire last year for us when after the first match of the playoffs, he said something along the lines of, why not us? Like, why can't it be us that makes it all the way to MLS Cup and eventually become MLS champions? And I think that really, from not only on the pitch, but also off the pitch, that really fired us up internally. And that was the North Star for the playoffs. And the fact that we were able to go as far as we went and able to take our entire front office staff and our supporter groups out to LA and really celebrate this moment with the club was very, very special. And if you were fortunate enough to experience it, it's like, that's the bar. Like, we're not settling for anything less this year. So from a marketing perspective, from our home opener, we celebrated the 2024 Eastern Conference Championship. We closed the book on last year, right? And now we're focusing on 2025. But at the end of the day, the New York Red Bulls are showing up every single day. They are playing their hearts out. And it's anyone who is remotely interested in the sport or interested in seeing nonstop action. Sports Illustrated Stadium on a Saturday night is really the place to be. And the best part of it is from a planning perspective, our matches, 95% of our matches are on a Saturday night, 7:30. So fans are able to come out, have a great time at the match, cheer on the club, be part of our community. And then they're able to go out and, have the second part of their Saturday night because our matches are only 90 minutes. So I think that it really, really started, at least the moment for us was really when our captain said those words.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Emil Forsberg was, it was like one of those great sports moments. But we've been consistently one of the most competitive teams in the marketplace. I mean, we actually have the longest active playoff streak in all of North American sports, 15 straight years. I think second is the Kansas City Chiefs. But
That's a great stat. That's awesome.
Right? There's a but there. We still haven't won the MLS Cup, and to Lisa's point, like, we're not done. We can 15 straight years of being in the playoffs is a remarkable feat. But now we got to win the MLS Cup, and we had a little taste of it last year. But the goal is to hoist that cup.
I thought you were going to say the turnaround happened when I saw you in Miami against Inter, and the Red Bulls went up 1-0, and then Messi decided to score like 19 goals after that, or 5 maybe. But it was
that was. I mean, you kind of saw why he's potentially the greatest of all time, right? Why he's the goal. And it was interesting, right? So David and I got a chance to see each other in Miami for that match. We 2 months prior, we beat them here I think it was 4-0. I think we beat them here. And then we were up 1-0 and we're like, oh, we own this team. Messi became Messi. He came out of the locker room and
he was more Messi in that second half than he's ever been Messi before, I think. It was very Messi-like.
It was.
I like to say he does things that even his avatar in FIFA can't do on the video game.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Well, one of the reasons we wanted to have you both on at the same time is because your careers have sort of crossed paths and interwoven over time. So I want to talk specifically about, you both spent time at Madison Square Garden, and I think, right there among all of them, so many great people in our industry have spent time at Madison Square Garden over the years. What was it? What did you take away from your experience at Madison Square Garden that made it special?
Well, I think for me, having the opportunity fresh out of college to work at the world's most famous arena for the hottest basketball team at the time, and I don't want to date myself, but that to me was just incredible. And the fact that I was able to learn from one of the best marketers in the industry, Pam Harris, who was my very first boss and still became a mentor, and who's still a mentor to me. I literally modeled my career after hers. And I really, really think that that foundation of working for, the sports capital really set the foundation for future jobs, because from day one, I was learning from the best. And I think that so many people have gone through Madison Square Garden. And, we all have our memories and what we took away from that experience. But to me, it was learning from the best from day one.
Yeah, the way you just position is perfect. Like, I started there as a 19-year-old intern, and I was there for almost 12 years. I literally think I grew up there. And, similar to what Elisa was saying about Pam Harris, like, for me, I got so much exposure and so much different experience, but mostly the exposure that I got to so many people that, quite honestly, all my jobs since then actually stemmed from an experience or from somebody from Madison Square Garden. So I went from the Garden to the Nets because Neil Davis was there. I went from the Nets to Van Wagner because Scott Epstein was there. I went from, Van Wagner to here because the media buying agency that we use at Madison Square Garden introduced me to our president, Mark 𝘱🏆here. So it was not only just where I grew up, but it was where I really kind of grew my leadership skills. I really started to understand that every relationship that you have and that you encounter in this business can count and can matter. And it was just, for me, it was an amazing time to be there, because similarly, it is, the Knicks. I started there a year after both the Knicks and the Rangers were in the finals. So I missed that. And I was there for some really great years, but I worked on the TV side. So I also worked during a time where MSG Network was the home to every sports team in New York. It was pre-SNY, pre-Yes. So I had exposure to pretty much every team in the marketplace. It was a perfect way to start my career.
Yeah, that's great. Having moved to New York from Chicago, I certainly understood the significance of MSG. But I think until I moved here and started working and seeing and meeting people and understanding how many threads went back to MSG, it's been pretty amazing. So another neat thing is that you both touched post MSG what I consider one of the greatest rebrands in sports history, and I think other people would too. Joe, you and I talked about this when I was at Van Wagner, because it was so drastic. So I'm going to have both of you comment on it. And Joe, I think you started the process a little bit while you were there when the team was going to be moving from New Jersey to Brooklyn. And then Elisa, you obviously had to bring it to life and fulfill it and activate it. So if you guys could kind of take us through that process, because I think our listeners would love to know about one of the great sports team rebrands in all history.
Appreciate that. So I started there in 2007. And I was there until 2010. So it was during a time where the team was still in New Jersey, and everybody knew that the team was moving to Brooklyn. It was a really odd time for the team. So similar to my start at the Garden, I got there right after, the team had this great successful run in the playoffs, and then it started to kind of, maybe it was my fault, where you stopped at like success ended and struggles began. But from a marketing perspective, as a marketer, I actually loved being in those challenging times, because it allowed us to kind of throw anything at the wall and see if it stuck. But because of the unique timing that I was there, everybody in New Jersey hated us because we were leaving, and everybody in Brooklyn hated us because they thought that we were going to ruin their neighborhood. And Elisa successfully changed that perception, when she got there. So for me, originally my job was to establish this new Barclays Center brand. I was brought in to really focus on the arena side, and then my role evolved to get involved on the net side and start working on this rebrand from from New Jersey Nets to Brooklyn Nets. So I had the opportunity, and that's actually right around the time that Jay-Z started to get more involved and his people got more involved. So working with his folks in terms of what that look, some of the colors, working with the NBA. It was during a time where black uniforms were not actually allowed to be a new uniform. In the NBA, I don't know if you recall that there was this time where they basically were like new teams were not allowed to take on black as a new color for whatever reason it was. So I believe Jay-Z actually had to make a call into the commissioner's office to get that approved. And then that's kind of where I left it off, and I'll throw it over to you to take us through the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the Nets in November of 2010, excuse me. And I joined as director of marketing. And to Joe's point, we were lame duck playing at Prudential Center. We got, like less than 10,000 people at our matches. Literally the governor of New Jersey was like, just leave already. And I just remember I was tasked with, okay, how are you launching this club in Brooklyn? And I remember sitting at, like the highest level at Prudential Center and putting together the marketing strategy of moving the team from New Jersey to Brooklyn. And we had a great agency partner. And at that point, we were like, okay, the uniform was already done. The logo was already done. And it was like, okay, we had to start thinking about the court. We had to start thinking about what was the communication. And it was really multiple partners. So it was the Nets front office, Adidas, who at the time was the outfitter for the team, the NBA, and then we had an external agency partner. And the first thing that we did was we started looking at data. We needed to understand who was moving from New Jersey to Brooklyn. And it was the number of season ticket holders that were going to follow us were so low because everyone was like, Brooklyn, that's like, another country. And I'm like, it's 13 miles away. And then Adidas had done their own Brooklyn research. And then the NBA, we worked with the NBA to do a brand health study to really understand what the Nets name meant in the market. And after looking at all of those results, we made the decision internally that we were going to approach the move as a startup club, like starting from the ground up and as an expansion team. And really that was our approach. And it was literally building it up from the ground up. And I remember taking trips to Brooklyn to walk the streets, to look at the neighborhoods, to like understand like, okay, what's important to Brooklynites? And one of the things that we found that really anchored the marketing of the club was that we knew that Brooklynites were starving for a team to call their own, because the year that we were going to launch, it would have been the 43rd year that the Dodgers left Brooklyn to go to LA. So we had an opportunity, and we knew the characteristics of Brooklynites, right? Very proudful people. They're like, they're the best. They're better than Manhattanites. And the biggest thing that we were afraid, like, you only have one time to make a first impression. And one of the things that we decided was that we had the brand voice had to come in from within the borough, and we couldn't come at the borough, right? Because if we came in like the big bad NBA team, that wasn't going to be good for us. And we literally that was the North Star, is how does the voice come from within the borough? And that's how the campaign came to life. But the most important part of that journey was information, was how much information can we get our hands on, because we needed to understand the mindset of the fans, potential fans, and then also understand the brand health of the team.
Funny little tidbit for you. When when we were early in the process, and Elisa talked about the Nets part of the name, we were, while I was there, we were taking a look at, do we continue with the Nets name? A friend of mine at the time suggested, forget about the name, Brooklyn is the brand, as what we found, just call it Brooklyn. And like similar to like a soccer club where it's, but just go Brooklyn, forget about Nets, go Brooklyn. And I remember talking to Fred Mangione at the time, and then Brett, and Brett's like, nope, nope, we're keeping the Nets. But it was Brooklyn, it was Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn, she mentioned Brooklyn Knights, being the type of folks.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Knights was actually another name that was being thought about, but it at the end of the day, they stuck for the right reasons, stuck with the name, the Nets, stuck with the brand, the Nets. But to Elisa's point, what I think they did so brilliantly is they really focused on Brooklyn as the brand itself, and as almost like its own personality.
Before we let you go, and thank you so much for spending this time with us, we have two questions that we ask all our guests. So I'll ask the first one, you can both answer it, and then I'll ask the second one, and you can both answer that one as well.
Where'd your career get started? Where'd you started?
I grew up in a household, and Tim, I think you may know this story. I grew up in a household where girls were not allowed to play sports. So my older brother was a basketball star, and our family outings were to go to cheer him on. And I fell in love with the game of basketball. And as an undergrad, I had to do an internship. And I originally wanted to work in television, and I did an internship at Madison Square Garden Network, and I hated it. However, as an intern, I sat next to the sales and marketing folks, and I was like, I want to know what they're doing, and I want to be over there. So I went back to school, and I took my first marketing class and fell in love with it, and the rest is history.
So
I was at Rutgers. I was a sophomore. Ran into somebody on the street who I used to play Little League baseball with, who was about to graduate from Rutgers. And, we were just catching up, and he's like, hey, I just finished my internship at Madison Square Garden. I'm like, what's an internship? And he told me what he did and gave me the info. I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. I want to try that. I basically just peppered the HR person until she finally gave me an interview. Got an internship in MSG Networks in the programming department, had no idea what programming was. Finished that internship, basically would never leave. I spent 2.5 years of my last 2.5 years of Rutgers, basically just hanging around Madison Square Garden. There were instances, and I was doing all sorts of odd jobs, from production work to various internships. My schedule for the majority of my time at Rutgers was I was on the first train from Rutgers in New Brunswick to Penn Station at 6:15. I would come back in the afternoon for classes at Rutgers, then go back to Madison Square Garden to work the night show. It was called Sports Desk, which was their localized version of Sports Center, and then be on the last train back from Penn Station to New Brunswick. And that was my every day for almost 2.5 years. And similarly, always was like intrigued by marketing, and a job opened up in marketing right as I was about to graduate. I went to the hiring manager, Deb Patiri, who ended up being my boss for a while. And I said, hey, I'm interested. She's like, Joe, you don't have to apply. You've been here for 2.5 years. We know you, like, job is yours. And that was my start in marketing. And the rest is history, as they say.
two great stories. Okay, last question. What one piece of advice would you have for somebody starting out in the sports business in particular, but in business in general?
I think number one is really understand what you want to do and what you don't want to do. Because I think that people think, oh, I want to work in sports. And they really don't understand that there are so many jobs in sport. I mean, you could be a graphic designer, you can be in sales, you can be in legal, you can be in finance. Like, understand what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And number two is really tap into networking and get to know, if you know that your track, you want to do sales, understand what sales is, what that entails, and start networking with folks that are already in those positions.
Yeah, similarly, I always go back to experience and exposure, and you just got to get as much as possible. And yes, understand what you like and what you don't like, but don't be afraid to try out, to Lisa's point, she was doing an internship at MSG Network, but I exposed her to sales and marketing, right? From my perspective, the one advice I give folks is try what you can to get yourself out there. Because you might not know, you might find out you're going to end up meeting somebody that will end up, inspiring you for what your next job is. And so much of my growth has been based on relationships, working with David at Van Wagner, working with, all the mentors that I mentioned at Madison Square Garden. That has been such an important part of my growth and my development, learning leadership styles, learning how to execute things within, collaboration, working with other folks. I think that only comes from getting as much experience, as much exposure as possible. And for me, that's what I always tell folks is, those two words.
Great stuff, guys. This has been an incredible discussion, and we thank you for allowing us to move from all of the great success you're having with the Red Bulls into some of your past stories as well. Elisa, I don't know you as well as I know Joe, but I find you incredibly delightful. And Joe, you're one of my all-time favorites that I've had an opportunity to work with. So we cannot thank you both enough for joining us on the show.
Well,
thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you both for the opportunity, and thank you for what you're doing. I mean, I love your show, and we've been following, at least I've been following. So so congratulations on your continued success.
And I would say the same thing. I mean, David, you've been a mentor, a dear friend of mine for many, many years. Tim, we've gotten a chance to interact and over the years, and as Elisa said, been following this podcast, following what you guys do, and couldn't be more thrilled to be a part of this podcast today.
Thank you so much. This has been great. We should have had two guests in the past, but I don't know if we would have. I don't know if we would have had as much success with any two other guests.
Most two guests we would have figured out a way to botch. These guys made it easy for sure. All right, you guys, great. Best of luck for the rest of the season. Good luck in Atlanta this weekend, and we'll be seeing you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon in
Take care.
Harrison.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
We're back. Thank you again to Joe Stetson and Elisa Padilla of the New York Red Bulls. Wow, David, what two great guests.
Great guests.
So now's the part of the show where we take a look forward, what we're looking forward to, what we're excited about, what we're interested in. David, what's on your mind and what are you looking forward to?
Well, I want to talk about a couple big subjects, I think, that are stories that we'll want to follow this year. And one of them, and it's not as though we talk about IndyCar that often, because we tend to talk about NASCAR a little more, but IndyCar had one heck of a start. Fox was advertising on the Super Bowl in a very F1 style, I thought, highlighting a few of their big stars, and it seemed to pay off. So Fox has taken over the broadcast of IndyCar, and they were up 45% in their viewership, with 1.417 million viewers for the season opener at St. Pete, which was way up from what they had with 975,000 when it was on NBC. So, and they were able to package it up with NASCAR race coming right after it, because Fox now has NASCAR and IndyCar. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can continue to combine those motorsport series in promotion. I think Fox does this very well, and looking forward to seeing how they continue on as the season progresses.
I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, IndyCar was the sport you watched. If you were interested in motorsports, guys like Bobby Unser and Al Unser and Gordon Johncock and Johnny Guthrie, right? They were the superstars of motorsports. NASCAR was very much a regional niche sport until the 1978, 79 Daytona 500 that did BAFO ratings.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting thing, Scott Dixon came in second at the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg last weekend. He did not have any race communications the entire race. There was a glitch, and he came in second. And probably better than most the importance of in-race communication, whether it's with your crew chief or with your spotter So that was unbelievable.
An amazing amount of communication goes on. I've had the opportunity to listen on quite a bit to that type of communication, and it's immense. I mean, they're constantly talking to drivers about where they are, lap speed, and so forth. But Dixon's a pro. He clearly knew what to do. But congrats to everyone there at IndyCar and at Fox for picking this up and going with it. It's going to put, that story that we've talked about is who's going to pick up the Formula One rights post ESPN, I think, are going to be even that much more interesting, given that Fox is showing that they can do some good work with this.
I think there's some amazing synergies between the three circuits, right? F1, IndyCar, and NASCAR.
Yeah.
If Fox is able to pick up all three. The problem then becomes one of scheduling.
Yeah.
I would imagine. So I just get done saying that I grew up watching IndyCar, but when I'm talking about what I'm looking forward to now, 𝘗𝘁𝘏𝘁, I think that's how you say her name,
Yeah.
is actually going to be racing this weekend in Phoenix in the NASCAR Cup Series. First female driver since Danica Patrick ran the Daytona 500 in 2018. Danica Patrick did not have a tremendous amount of success in NASCAR. I think that's safe to say. 𝘗𝘁𝘏𝘁𝘏 is running, is going to be racing for Live Fast Racing. It's a sort of a part-time team. And it's going to be interesting to see how she does. I don't think expectations are very high, but I do like to see that there is an opportunity for a female driver, and hopefully that will open up more opportunities going forward for more diversity within NASCAR and within motorsports in general.
Yeah, I think with what F1 is doing with F1 Academy and trying to bring along more female drivers, it's an exciting time for all of that. And listen, Danica didn't have the success I think that she hoped for on the circuit when she moved from IndyCar to NASCAR, but she was a huge marketing success, and she's continued to be able to capitalize on that from a broadcast standpoint. So I think all in all, the sport gave her a great deal of exposure, and in a lot of ways, she did open doors for people that came after. But there have been some great names, Lynn St. James, and you mentioned Janet Guthrie, Shirley Muldowney on the drag racing side. So there have been some great names in the past, but they shouldn't be as one-off. So yeah, I think it's a big opportunity for NASCAR, and certainly for 𝘗𝘁𝘏𝘁𝘏𝘁.
Well, that brings us to the end of another episode, our 101st. I want to thank you, the listeners. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, give us feedback. We really appreciate it. Until next time, he's DP, I'm McGhee, and we'll talk soon.